Hi, my name is Kurt Burdett, but you may know me better as your old pal Lucid Stew. And this video is all about showing Media Molecule why you should hire me for a Dreams content creator contractor position. I really got into content creation platforms 5 years ago with the launch of Project Spark for Xbox One. I was very active in that community and put out a lot of content for the community to use, just like I do in Dreams. I got my start in Project Spark making sailing ships in the same style as the game's built-in campaign to try to help support the title and new users. I continued doing this in various ways, like a series of fantasy airships. These were successful enough to be played on the floor of GDC that year. But I also used Project Spark to make a series of game titles which ranged from fighting squirrels to mechanical butterfly garden shooters to arena hero shooters featuring drivable vehicles, custom weapons, and AI bots. The last thing I did in Project Spark was to try to recreate what I knew of Rare's Sea of Thieves before its launch on Xbox One. I got a fair amount of art done, but unfortunately Project Spark permanently broke on my computer before I could add any gameplay. The last thing I did while Project Spark was still live was Mario vs. Darth Vader vs. Link vs. Master Chief. This was a celebration of the Project Spark community's love of both goblin smashing and of IP recreations. I managed to put this together in only 2 weeks using mainly parts I had already made for other projects. While I did make familiar characters in Project Spark in an attempt to support the community, I also made original characters that I used in various projects like the Outside 2 here. Importantly, characters are handled similarly in Project Spark and Dreams, so these experiences got me ready for what I'm doing now. More on that in a bit. Since I entered the Dreams beta in December of last year, I have published over 100 fully remixable elements for community use. Though not my original intention, I ended up spending most of my beta creating a large collection of static industrial themed props called Abandoned Industrial, intended mainly to support horror themes. However, this collection has ended up being used extensively for other purposes. I have also released 2 sample scenes in support to give the community examples of how they might use these elements. The main point of this collection for me was to learn to sculpt in Dreams and to better understand how to play to the engine's strengths. While the elements in this collection don't always show an understanding of that, I learned a lot making them. At the end of the beta, I applied some of that knowledge to create a set of more detailed science fiction interior pieces aimed at facilitating enormous static scenes while consuming moderate amounts of graphics thermal. I think I was successful because I was able to create corridors so long they can barely be measured, but moreover I learned how important it is to balance gameplay and graphics usage for scenes the size that people will actually build. My most popular individual elements have been trees, and I placed them in a collection with things mostly done by other creators as an example of how to use them, but also to show Dreams' potential to create tranquil garden spaces. The sample scene is an ongoing project that I am attempting to expand while balancing thermo and performance. After the Ancient Times art kit came out, I wanted to apply some lessons learned from that in a setting that was a little less represented, so I chose Desert City as a theme. This collection is far from complete, but it is a big lesson for me in working with paintings and painting limits. I learned a lot about paintings making this. Like my garden tour scene, this is an ongoing project. While trying to find a character that would work in Desert City's expo scene, I realized the Dreamiverse had some gaps and came up with the idea to form a group to fill those gaps. With that, the Dreams Guild was born, and along with 8 others, I am a founding member. Our first project was the Happy Farm Toys collection. My contribution was a toy building kit and some sample projects, as well as putting together most of the sample scene for the collection. In this group, I function as something akin to a lead, but our structure is a little more laid back, so we don't really have defined roles. We've collectively come up with an organizational method that allows us to produce pretty tightly themed sculptures and release them in a timely manner. I do my best to contribute and help the group. Dreams Guild currently has 10 members and is working on expanded content offerings as I speak. Sculpture is not the only thing I have done in Dreams. I am familiar with programming logic and have taken some time to try to learn Dreams logic systems. Like my sculptures, I have made logic pieces with the community in mind and try to design them in easy-to-use ways with lots of labeling and instruction when needed. I try to keep things simple. A good example is a grid-based movement system built around the standard puppet that only requires a grid of tags and a couple dozen additional gadgets in the character logic. Another place I've tried to push my boundaries is with my RDO Jones scene. I use that to better understand cinematic and action sequences, as well as checkpoints in dynamic creation and destruction. A sequence where the character is racing down a street, trying to avoid falling roof tiles during an earthquake, is an example of how I try to approach gameplay with a slightly different angle when possible. I know I've done a lot of large-scale sets of things that snap together, so I wanted to show a few things I've done lately that are slightly different. This is a toy hawk for an upcoming Happy Farm Toys expansion. I just recently released a couple of Monet tribute spray paintings. And lastly, here is a brief peek at my first foray into Dreams characters for another Dreams Guild project coming soon. Thanks for taking the time to watch my showreel and consider my application. I'd love to get the job, but hired or not, I'll see you in the Dreamiverse.